A colossal winged monster with the face of a man and the body of a dragon stares down from a river cliff. This is the Piasa Bird, a Native American chimera whose legend terrified the Illiniwek people for generations. By the end of this story, you will understand the full, incredible saga of this mythical beast, from its ancient origins to its shocking modern reappearance. We will uncover the truth behind the petroglyph that stunned French explorers and investigate why this creature was far more than just a simple monster. What kind of story does a truly terrifying beast like this exist to tell? The year was 1673. Two French explorers, a missionary named Jacques Marquette and a fur trader named Louis Joliet, were charting the vast, unknown waterways of the New World. Their canoes carried them down the mighty Mississippi River, a place of immense beauty and profound danger. As they navigated the currents near what is now Alton, Illinois, their journey was interrupted by something that froze the blood in their veins. High upon a stark limestone bluff, a colossal image had been painted. Marquette would later write of the shock that gripped him and his men, describing not one, but two monstrous creatures depicted in vivid, terrifying pigments. He recorded every horrifying detail with the careful eye of a man who had seen a demon. The beasts had the horns of a deer, eyes as red as burning coals, and a long, scaly body that seemed to ripple with unnatural life. But the most unnerving feature was the face, a human face staring out from the rock with an expression of ancient malice. This was not a simple animal totem. This was a warning, a story painted in fear, and it became the first and most crucial written record of the Piasa Bird, a testament to a legend that European minds could scarcely comprehend. That name, Piasa, is a warning in itself. The word originates from the Miami, Illinois language spoken by the Illiniwek people who first told its story. Linguists often translate it as the bird that devours men. In some dialects, it simply means a destroyer. This is not a creature to be respected or bargained with. Its very name is a declaration of its purpose, a single word that encapsulates its monstrous nature. Think of the power a name can hold. In our own world, we give fearsome creatures names like Grim Reaper or Godzilla, titles that instantly convey a sense of dread and scale. For the Illiniwek, the name Piasa served the same function. It was a linguistic shortcut to pure terror, a label that told you everything you needed to know. You were not dealing with a simple predator of the forest. You were facing a being whose entire reason for existence was consumption and ruin. This naming was deliberate. It framed the creature not as a random beast, but as a force of mythological evil with a specific and horrifying role to play in their world. The name was the first layer of the story, a story painted on a cliff face for all travelers to see and understand. Every part of the Piasa's body was a fusion of nightmares, a deliberate assembly of the most dangerous traits from the natural world. Its head was crowned with the branching antlers of a mighty stag, symbols of wild power and dominion over the forest. But below those horns was a face that defied all reason, the bearded, intelligent face of a man, yet twisted into a predatory mask with sharp, flesh-rending teeth. This human-like visage was perhaps its most unsettling feature, suggesting a cruel and ancient intellect behind the hunger. Its body stretched long and serpentine, covered in iridescent scales that hinted at a dragon's impenetrable hide and primordial strength. For locomotion and attack, it did not slither but stalked on four limbs that were powerfully built like a panther's, each tipped with claws capable of shredding bark from trees or armor from a warrior. And finally, granting it dominion over the sky itself, were vast wings. Early accounts differ on their exact nature, some describing them as leathery and bat-like, others as feathered like an eagle's, but their purpose was terrifyingly clear. This combination of deer, man, dragon, panther, and winged creature makes the Piasa a quintessential chimera, a being whose very anatomy was designed for a singular, monstrous purpose. It could think like a man, stalk like a great cat, soar like a raptor, and strike with the mythical power of a dragon. No single realm was safe from its reach, for it was a master of earth, sky, and water, a perfect engine of predation built from the most feared parts of creation. Long before the French explorers saw its painted image, the Piasa was a living terror for the Illiniwek people. The story begins in a time of profound fear, when the creature claimed the great river bluffs as its own hunting ground. Its shadow would fall over the village without warning, a sudden eclipse accompanied by the thunderous beat of its wings. In a flash of scales and claws, it would descend, snatching warriors from the riverbank and children from the edge of the woods, carrying them back to its high cliffside lair to be devoured. No one was safe. The people lived in a state of constant dread, their lives dictated by the whims of a monster that treated them as its personal larder. It was an existential threat, a force of nature that seemed impossible to defeat. The community's survival hung in the balance, and in their darkest hour, they turned to one man for salvation. That man was Chief Ouatoga, a leader known not only for his courage but for his deep and powerful connection to the Great Spirit. He knew that conventional weapons and brute force were useless against such a beast. The Piasa could not be fought with spears alone. It would require a stratagem of divine cunning, a plan born of both desperation and profound faith. The fate of his entire people now rested on the wisdom of their chief and the dangerous, sacred plea he was about to make. Chief Ouatoga understood the language of desperation. He walked away from his village, his heart as heavy as the stone of the cliffs, and climbed to a secluded, sacred place. There he began to fast and pray, pouring out his people's terror and his own helplessness to the Great Spirit. For days he sought an answer, his body weakening but his spirit growing more attuned to the whispers of the divine. It was in this liminal state between waking and dreaming that the vision finally came. It was not a vision of a mighty warrior or a magical weapon. Instead, the Great Spirit showed him the Piasa's own nature. He saw its arrogance, its monstrous pride, and its unending hunger. The plan that unfolded in his mind was one of profound cunning. They would not fight the beast with strength, for it was stronger. They would not attack it with spears, for its scales were like armor. They would offer it a feast, a grand and tempting sacrifice laid out in the open, but this offering would be a trap. The bravest warriors, his most loyal men, would conceal themselves nearby, armed not for a direct assault, but for an ambush born of perfect timing. Their weapons would be tipped with a poison so potent that a single strike would bring the colossal creature down. The plan was brilliant, but it hinged on one terrifying, essential element. Chief Ouatoga himself would be the bait. He would stand alone in the clearing, a solitary offering to its hunger, placing his complete trust in his warriors, his vision, and the Great Spirit. This was the ultimate test of his leadership, a gamble that risked everything on a single, sacred moment. The plan was a masterpiece of psychological warfare, designed to exploit the Piasa's most defining trait, its gluttonous pride. Ouatoga returned to his people and gathered a small band of his most trusted and courageous warriors. He explained the divine stratagem, a plan where their success depended not on brute force, but on absolute stillness and perfect timing. They would journey to the very foot of the monster's cliff, a place stained with the memory of countless tragedies. There, in a clearing visible from the sky, Ouatoga would stand completely alone. He would present himself not as a defiant challenger, but as a willing, vulnerable offering. His faith was the foundation of the entire trap. Meanwhile, the warriors were to conceal themselves among the rocks and dense foliage at the edge of the clearing. They were instructed to cover their bodies with the gray mud of the riverbank, making them indistinguishable from the stone and shadow around them. Their most vital task was to remain utterly motionless, to control their very breath, for the slightest sound or movement would betray them all to the creature's keen senses. Their weapons, however, were the key to the entire endeavor. The Great Spirit's vision had specified the use of poisoned arrows. The warriors prepared their strongest bows and tipped their arrows with a toxic concoction brewed from the most venomous plants and creatures known to their people, a poison so potent that even a single, well-placed shot would be lethal. The entire operation was a delicate, terrifying clockwork. The bait, the hidden archers, and the poisoned projectiles all had to work in flawless harmony. Everything now depended on the monster's hunger and the chief's unwavering courage. The moment of truth arrived under a silent, watching sky. Chief Ouatoga stood alone in the clearing, his feet planted firmly on the earth, his gaze fixed on the towering bluffs. He was a statue of resolve, offering his own life as the ultimate wager. Then a shadow fell over him, not from a cloud, but from a shape that blotted out the sun itself. The air grew cold, and a sound tore through the silence, a screech that was neither bird nor beast, but a shriek of pure, predatory triumph that echoed off the stone cliffs. The Piasa had taken the bait. It circled once, a monstrous silhouette against the bright sky, its human-like face locked on the solitary figure below. With a beat of its vast wings that kicked up a whirlwind of dust and leaves, it tucked its wings and dove. It fell from the sky like a spear, claws extended, its red eyes burning with the promise of an easy kill. Ouatoga did not flinch. He stood his ground as death descended, his faith a shield against the terror. Just as the creature's shadow engulfed him and its talons were about to find their mark, the hidden warriors struck. From the rocks and mud, figures sprang to life. A chorus of bowstrings thrummed in unison, and a storm of arrows whistled through the air. They found their target in the beast's only vulnerable spot, the soft, unscaled flesh of its underbelly as it stretched forward to seize its prey. Dozens of poison tips sank deep. The Piasa's triumphant screech twisted into a roar of shock and agony. Its dive became a clumsy, faltering crash. It writhed on the ground, the potent toxins already coursing through its colossal body, seizing its monstrous heart. With one final, shuddering convulsion, the great beast staggered toward the edge of the cliff and tumbled over, its reign of terror ending in a silent fall to the rocks below. But the death of the monster was only the beginning of its story. The legend of the Piasa bird was never just a simple tale of a beast to be slain. It was a powerful, multi-layered symbol carved into the collective memory of the Illiniwek people, a story that explained the world and their place within it. On its most immediate level, the Piasa represented the very real and ever-present dangers of the untamed wilderness. Its sudden, screaming descent from the sky could be seen as a metaphor for the unpredictable violence of nature itself. Imagine a flash flood surging down a dry riverbed without warning, or a mountain lion materializing from the shadows of the forest. The Piasa was the embodiment of these primal threats, a single, terrifying face put on the chaotic forces that could snatch away life in an instant. Its home on the river bluffs tied it directly to the life-giving yet dangerous Mississippi, a source of sustenance that could also bring sudden death. The creature made the abstract fear of the unknown concrete and gave it a form that could, in the logic of the story, be understood and ultimately confronted. Beyond a symbol of natural dangers, the myth served as a profound lesson in social and spiritual values. The entire narrative is a blueprint for how a community should face an existential crisis. It champions the virtues of courage, not as reckless bravado, but as the calm, self-sacrificing resolve shown by Chief Ouatoga. It highlights the power of unity, where the success of the plan depended entirely on the coordinated action and unwavering discipline of the hidden warriors. And it centers on the necessity of faith, the belief that a higher power would provide guidance when human strength alone was insufficient. The story teaches that some challenges cannot be overcome by force alone. They require wisdom, strategy, and a willingness for individuals to risk everything for the good of the whole. The Piasa was the crisis, and the community's response to it became the model for survival and perseverance. At its deepest core, the Piasa bird myth represents the eternal struggle between order and chaos, between the human world of community and the wild, untamed world that surrounds it. The village represents order, safety, and society. The Piasa's cliff represents the wild, chaotic frontier, a place of danger and the unknown. The creature itself is the agent of chaos, constantly threatening to invade and destroy the fragile order the people have built. Its defeat, therefore, is not just the killing of a monster. It is a symbolic restoration of balance. It is the story of humanity carving out a place of safety from a world filled with terrifying forces, asserting that through courage, unity, and divine connection, order can, at least temporarily, triumph over chaos. This struggle is never permanently won. It is a cycle, a constant negotiation with the wild, just as the painted image on the cliff served as a permanent reminder of both the danger and the hard-won victory. This deeper meaning transforms the Piasa from a mere predator into a fundamental character in the story of human existence, a mythical representation of the very real fears every community must face and overcome. So what became of that original, terrifying painting that so stunned the French explorers? The creature was slain, but its image remained, a spectral warning etched into the stone for generations. Yet if you were to travel to the bluffs near Alton, Illinois today, you would not see the painting described by Marquette. The original is gone, vanished into the mists of history, and its disappearance is a mystery all its own. The most likely and gentle explanation is the slow, patient work of nature. The painting was exposed to the full fury of the elements for centuries, perhaps even millennia. Imagine the relentless Mississippi River winds, the scorching summer sun, the freezing winter rains, and the gradual flaking of the limestone itself. These forces act like an invisible sandpaper, slowly but surely scouring away pigment and stone. It is possible the painting simply faded away, its vibrant reds and blacks washing back into the earth from which they came, a victim of natural erosion. Yet there is a more deliberate and darker theory. As settlers moved into the region throughout the 18th and 19th centuries, they brought with them their own fears and beliefs. To many of these new arrivals, the monstrous pagan image was an object of superstition or even blasphemy. A depiction of a man-faced dragon did not fit into their worldview, and it may have been seen as a frightening relic of a savage past that they were intent on erasing. It is tragically plausible that the painting was deliberately defaced or destroyed, its powerful story silenced by those who did not understand its meaning. Then there is the simple, haunting possibility that it was lost to time. The exact location documented by Marquette was never precisely recorded for modern archaeology. Quarrying and construction along the riverbanks in the 19th century dramatically reshaped the cliffs. The very rock face that held the Piasa may have been dynamited and carted away for building stone, the myth literally broken into fragments to build a new city, completely unaware of the cultural treasure it held. This loss means the true appearance of the original Piasa is now a matter of speculation. Marquette's written description is our only reliable guide, and it leaves many questions. Were the colors as vivid as he described? Was the style more symbolic than literal? We will never know for sure, creating a void where imagination and a surprising desire for restoration would eventually rush in to fill. The original painting was gone, but the legend refused to die. It simmered in the local memory for over a century and a half, a ghost story whispered along the riverbanks, waiting for someone to give it a new body. That someone was a man named Professor John Russell. In the mid-1800s, this charismatic teacher and amateur historian from Bluffdale, Illinois, became utterly captivated by the tale of the Piasa Bird. He immersed himself in the available accounts, primarily the written record left by Father Marquette, and gathered whatever local oral traditions still survived. Russell was not an archaeologist trying to uncover a lost artifact. He was a storyteller and a romantic, and he envisioned something far more dramatic than a faded memory. He decided to resurrect the monster not from bones but from ink and imagination. His plan was audacious. He would paint a new Piasa, a grand and terrifying image that would restore the creature to its rightful place on the Mississippi bluffs. This was not an attempt at a perfect historical reconstruction, for the original was lost. Instead, it was an act of creative interpretation, a fusion of Marquette's chilling description and Russell's own flair for the theatrical. He took the core components, the antlers, the human face, the scaly body, and the vast wings, and rendered them with a new, dynamic ferocity. His Piasa was captured in a moment of action, wings spread wide, body coiled as if ready to leap from the rock and resume its hunting. This was a monster designed to inspire awe and fear in a new generation. Russell's painting was an immediate sensation. It was precisely the kind of vivid, spectacular image that the 19th century public loved, a piece of frontier Gothic that captured the romanticized danger of the American wilderness. Travelers on steamboats would point it out, newspapers wrote stories about it, and the legend of the Piasa bird was injected with a powerful new life. But this revival came with a profound consequence. Professor Russell's dramatic interpretation, born of romance and local lore, effectively overwrote the ancient, original image. It became the primary visual reference for the creature in the public mind. The Piasa we imagine today, the one that appears in books, on websites, and in modern artwork, is almost always a descendant of John Russell's vision. His romanticized version became the definitive Piasa, proving that a myth is a living thing, shaped not just by its ancient origins, but by the hands and hearts of those who choose to remember it. The legend, however, refused to stay buried in the past or confined to history books. Today, if you drive along the Great River Road just north of Alton, Illinois, you are greeted by a startling sight. Two enormous, brilliantly colored Piasa birds are painted high on the limestone bluffs, their fierce gazes fixed on the modern traffic flowing below. These are not the faded pigments of antiquity, nor are they Professor Russell's 19th century revival. These modern murals were created in the late 1990s, a massive community project designed to permanently restore the monster to its mythical home. Local artists working from scaffolds and lifts translated the classic Chimera imagery onto the rock face on a truly monumental scale. They used modern, durable paints to ensure the creature would withstand the elements, a conscious effort to create a landmark for the ages. The result is a piece of public art that is impossible to ignore, a bold declaration that the story is far from over. This vibrant installation has transformed the Piasa from a whispered folktale into a certified roadside attraction. Travelers deliberately pull over at the designated viewing area to snap photographs and read the informational plaques. It has become a point of local pride, a unique piece of identity for the city of Alton, distinguishing it from every other town along the river. How does a symbol of primal terror become a welcoming icon? The answer lies in the power of storytelling. These paintings are not celebrating the monster's hunger, but the triumph over it. They keep the legend alive not as a warning of immediate danger, but as an invitation to remember. For every child who points and asks their parents what that giant bird is, the story of Chief Ouatoga and his brave warriors is told once more. For every visitor who looks up in awe, the deeper themes of courage, community, and resilience are silently communicated. The Piasa bird no longer steals lives from the riverbank, but it continues to capture something just as vital, our imagination. It serves as a tangible link between a vibrant modern community and the ancient spiritual landscape it calls home, ensuring that the echo of its wings will be heard for generations to come. But the story of the Piasa bird holds a secret, a layer of mystery that challenges everything we think we know. What if the monster was never a monster at all? Archaeological and anthropological research offers a compelling alternative to the legend of the man-devouring beast. Some scholars propose that the original painting may have been a powerful cultural symbol, a representation of a clan animal or a significant spirit being, entirely misinterpreted by the terrified French explorers. Imagine Father Marquette and Louis Joliet, men steeped in a European world, filled with demons, dragons, and biblical beasts. They are navigating an alien landscape, surrounded by people whose language and beliefs they do not fully understand. When they look up and see this immense composite creature painted on the cliff, their minds would have immediately reached for the only reference points they had. A being with horns, wings, and a fearsome visage could only be a devil, a monster, a thing of pure evil. They filtered what they saw through their own cultural lens, and in doing so, they may have fundamentally transformed its meaning for the historical record. The name itself, Piasa, translated as the bird that devours men, might have been a simplified explanation given to the frightened foreigners, a way to convey its power without delving into complex spiritual concepts that would have been lost in translation. The true, sacred name and its deeper significance may have been reserved for the Illiniwek people alone, a knowledge that faded when their communities were displaced and their traditions suppressed. What if the creature was not a predator but a protector? In many Native American traditions, powerful composite beings are not monsters. They are spiritual guardians, representations of clans, or symbols of the natural world's balance. The so-called antlers could have symbolized a connection to the forest and its sustenance. The human face might have indicated wisdom or a link to ancestral spirits. The wings could have represented the sky, the panther-like limbs the earth, and the serpentine body the river. This interpretation paints a completely different picture. Instead of a terrifying demon, the Piasa could have been a sacred mural representing the unity of the cosmos, a spiritual map of the world the Illiniwek inhabited. It might have served as a territorial marker for a specific clan, a symbol of their identity and their connection to that particular place on the river. The location itself, high on a bluff overlooking the life-giving Mississippi, was undoubtedly a sacred site. The painting was not a warning of a literal monster, but a statement of spiritual presence and cultural identity. This theory does not necessarily invalidate the legend of Chief Ouatoga. Oral traditions are fluid and stories can evolve over centuries. A powerful, ancient symbol could have later inspired a dramatic folktale about a great beast being defeated, a story that taught important lessons about community and courage. The two interpretations can coexist, one as the possible original cultural meaning and the other as a later narrative evolution. This scholarly perspective adds a profound layer of intrigue to the Piasa's story. It asks us to question not just the legend, but the very nature of history and how it is recorded. It reminds us that the first written account is not always the whole truth, and that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are born from a simple, tragic failure to understand. This collision of ancient legend and modern mystery hunting inevitably draws the Piasa into the world of cryptozoology. For those who search for hidden animals, the creature's description is a siren call, its composite anatomy echoing reports of other enigmatic beings across North America. Many point to the legendary thunderbird of various indigenous traditions, a colossal raptor capable of creating storms with its wings. Both are immense flying creatures tied to the landscape, yet the Piasa, with its human face and mammalian limbs, is a far more complex and terrifying chimera. Its profile also finds a strange, modern cousin in the Mothman of West Virginia folklore, another winged, red-eyed humanoid associated with premonitions of disaster. These parallels are not exact, but they create a compelling pattern in the minds of believers, a suggestion that such beings are not mere fiction but could be rare, undiscovered species or even interdimensional visitors that our ancestors occasionally glimpsed. The question then becomes, could a creature like the Piasa have actually existed? Cryptozoologists often argue that the fossil record is incomplete, pointing to giant birds like the teratorn, which had a wingspan of over 20 feet, as a potential biological basis for the thunderbird legends. They propose that the Piasa's description, while exaggerated through generations of storytelling, might be a cultural memory of a large, now extinct predator, perhaps a massive bat or a unique reptilian creature that once inhabited the river valleys. This line of thinking taps into a deep, universal fascination, the hope that the world still holds profound secrets, that maps are not entirely filled, and that the old stories contain a kernel of tangible truth. It transforms the Piasa from a spiritual symbol into a potential candidate for a real, flesh and blood mystery, a puzzle waiting to be solved by a lucky explorer or a piece of unearthed evidence. This speculative leap keeps the legend vibrantly alive in a new context, forever hovering in that tantalizing space between myth and potential reality. The gap between myth and bone is not as wide as we might think. To understand the biological echoes within the Piasa legend, we must look to the ancient skies of North America itself. While no single fossil matches the creature's chimeric form, the continent was once home to flying giants that could easily inspire tales of monstrous raptors. Consider the Teratorn, a massive vulture-like bird with a wingspan stretching over 20 feet. This was not a simple scavenger, it was a formidable predator capable of snatching up prey the size of a small deer. Then there was Quetzalcoatlus, a pterosaur from the age of dinosaurs, one of the largest flying animals to ever exist. With a wingspan approaching 40 feet, the size of a small airplane, its shadow falling over the landscape would have been a truly prehistoric spectacle. The sheer scale of these animals proves that the concept of a giant, sky-born predator is not pure fantasy. It was once a reality. The human mind is a powerful engine for pattern recognition. Imagine the first people to arrive in the Americas, encountering the massive, scattered bones of these long-extinct creatures emerging from riverbanks or eroding from cliffs. Finding the gigantic skull of a mastodon alongside the strange, hollow-boned wing of a Quetzalcoatlus could easily lead to a composite understanding of a single living monster. The legends would not need to be a perfect memory of the animal, but a brilliant, terrifying synthesis of unexplained evidence. This is not to say the Piasa was a real biological chimera. Its human face and panther-like limbs firmly place it in the realm of symbolic mythology. Yet the thunderous impact of a creature like Quetzalcoatlus, the very real possibility of a flying beast large enough to cast a village into shadow, provides a plausible seed from which the towering tree of the Piasa myth could grow. The monster on the cliff may be a work of art, but the fear it represents could be one of humanity's oldest inheritances, a ghost of a time when the skies truly were ruled by giants. The landscape itself is a character in this story. The great river bluffs of the Mississippi are not gentle hills. They are towering walls of ancient limestone, carved over millennia by the relentless flow of the river below. To stand at their base is to feel small, a tiny figure gazing up at a fortress of stone that blocks out half the sky. These cliffs are riddled with fissures and dark, gaping caves, natural lairs for any creature that wished to remain unseen. From the river, the view is one of immense power and isolation, a kingdom of rock that commands the horizon. Imagine the soundscape that would have surrounded the Illiniwek people here. The wind does not whisper through these bluffs, it howls. It funnels through the rocky channels and screams from cavern mouths, creating a constant, unnerving chorus that could easily be mistaken for the cry of a living thing. This is a place where the natural world feels amplified, where every echo feels intentional. It is no wonder a story of a winged terror was born here. The geography practically demands it. A creature living in those high caves would have a perfect predatory vantage point. It could see the canoes of travelers for miles, watch the movements of a village below, and plan its strikes with the cold calculation of a hunter who owns the sky. The river provided the prey, and the bluffs provided the perfect, impregnable fortress. This specific terrain, with its dramatic heights and hidden depths, did not just host the legend of the Piasa. It actively shaped it, providing the literal and metaphorical stage for a drama of fear, survival, and the eternal struggle between the safety of the community and the untamed wild looming just above it. The Piasa bird was far from alone in the skies of Native American belief. Across the varied landscapes of North America, from the dense forests of the East to the rugged coasts of the Pacific, other tribes told strikingly similar stories of immense supernatural creatures. This widespread pattern suggests these beings answered a deep, universal need to explain the powerful and often dangerous forces of the natural world. Among the most famous is the thunderbird, a figure central to the traditions of many Plains and Pacific Northwest tribes. This was no ordinary bird. It was a colossal raptor of unimaginable size and power, so immense that the mere flapping of its wings was said to create the rolling peals of thunder. The flash of its eyes was lightning, and it was often depicted as a powerful, benevolent spirit that brought life-giving rains and battled malevolent, serpentine creatures of the water. For tribes living on the vast, open plains or along storm-lashed coasts, the thunderbird personified the awesome life-or-death power of the weather itself. It was a force to be respected and appeased, a celestial guardian whose moods dictated the fate of the harvest and the community. While the Piasa was a localized terror, the thunderbird was a continental archetype, a master of the sky whose influence shaped entire cultures. Another powerful parallel emerges from the Smoky Mountains of Cherokee Territory. Here, the people feared the Octina, a dragon-like monster that embodied many of the same chimeric qualities as the Piasa. The Octina was described as a giant serpent, but one adorned with the horns of a deer and scales that shimmered with every color. Most terrifying of all was the diamond-like crest on its forehead, which held a hypnotic crystalline power. This creature was not just a physical threat, it was a spiritual one, a being of pure magic and danger that could only be confronted by the most powerful shamans. Like the Piasa, the Octina represented a specific, overwhelming danger tied to a place, often lurking in remote lakes or mountain passes, waiting for the unwary. These shared themes are impossible to ignore: a giant, flying predator, a composite creature made from the most feared parts of other animals, a being whose existence explains a natural phenomenon or a specific environmental threat. These common threads reveal a continent-wide storytelling language. Indigenous cultures, though vastly different from one another, all looked at the same towering mountains, the same violent storms, and the same deep, dark waters, and they all asked the same fundamental questions. The answers they found were embodied in these magnificent and terrifying forms. The Piasa, the thunderbird, and the Octina are not carbon copies, but rather regional variations on a profound mythological theme. They are the original monsters of the American landscape, born from the land itself to teach lessons about courage, respect for nature, and the delicate balance between humanity and the immense, untamed world we inhabit. This ancient destroyer of Illiniwek legend has now found a new hunting ground, the sprawling landscape of modern popular culture. Its fearsome image and dramatic story have migrated from river bluffs to the pages of best-selling novels and the digital realms of video games. In his novel, Excavation, author James Rowlands weaves a tale of ancient mysteries and biological horrors, and he places the Piasa bird squarely at the center of the action. Rowlands treats the creature not as a mere myth, but as a potential reality, reimagining it as a terrifying, genetically engineered predator lurking in a lost South American valley. This interpretation taps directly into the cryptozoological fascination with the creature, presenting it as a biological entity that could have, or perhaps still could, exist. The leap from a spiritual symbol to a scientifically engineered monster shows how the Piasa's core identity, that of an unstoppable chimeric predator, is flexible enough to fit a modern thriller narrative. It proves the legend has enough visceral power to drive a contemporary plot, its name alone carrying a weight of primal fear that needs little explanation for a new audience. The creature's digital life is just as vibrant. In the massively multiplayer online game, The Secret World, the Piasa bird appears as a formidable boss monster that players must band together to defeat. This is a fascinating full-circle moment. Just as Chief Ouatoga's warriors had to unite to overcome the beast, modern gamers must coordinate their efforts in a virtual world to bring it down. The game designers faithfully recreate its most iconic features, the antlers, the wings, the human face, translating the ancient petroglyph and the local legend into a dynamic, interactive encounter. This digital resurrection does more than just provide a challenge. It introduces the Piasa to a global audience who may have never heard of the Mississippi River bluffs. For these players, the creature becomes a new kind of archetype, a memorable American monster standing alongside dragons and vampires in the pantheon of gaming adversaries. Its inclusion signifies that the Piasa has earned a place in the broader lexicon of mythological creatures deemed worthy of digital immortality. Beyond novels and games, the Piasa's wings cast a long shadow over other media. It has appeared in comic books, its form stylized by modern artists, and its name is used for everything from local sports teams to businesses, cementing its status as a regional icon. Each appearance, whether in a paranormal television show or a piece of fantasy artwork, is a reinterpretation. Sometimes it is a literal monster, other times a spectral ghost, and occasionally a symbolic guardian. This evolution in depiction is key to its enduring appeal. The Piasa is no longer confined to a single story or meaning. It has become a cultural vessel, a powerful image that different creators can fill with their own fears and fantasies. The modern imagination has not diluted the Piasa. It has liberated it, allowing the bird that devours men to transform into a timeless icon whose story is still being written with every new appearance. The Piasa's journey from ancient cliff face to modern skin is a testament to its raw symbolic power. Local artists in particular have adopted the creature as a profound muse, translating its terrifying form into countless mediums that fill galleries and homes. You can find stunning oil paintings where the beast is rendered with classical drama, its scales glinting with meticulous highlights against a stormy Mississippi sky. Other interpretations take a more abstract approach, using bold swaths of color and distorted shapes to convey the emotional terror of its shadow falling over a village. Sculptors have wrestled with its chimeric form in wood and bronze, creating three-dimensional pieces where you can almost feel the texture of its leathery wings and the sharp points of its antlers. In the realm of folk art, the Piasa appears on hand-carved walking sticks, rustic signs, and intricate quilts, its image woven into the very fabric of regional identity. This artistic reinterpretation is not about creating a perfect copy. Each artist projects their own understanding onto the creature. One might emphasize the sorrow in its human eyes, suggesting a trapped spirit, while another amplifies its feral rage, making it a pure force of nature. The act of recreating the Piasa is a way for a community to process and own its most famous legend, to keep the story alive through personal expression. This evolution reaches its most intimate form in the world of tattoo art. People permanently ink the Piasa onto their skin, a powerful declaration of personal connection. For some, it is a badge of local pride, a piece of living history carried with them. For others, it is a talisman of protection or a symbol of overcoming a great personal struggle, much like Chief Ouatoga faced his monster. The tattoo needle modernizes the ancient pigment, etching the same primal fear and triumph onto human canvas instead of stone. What does this prolific artistic life tell us? It proves that the Piasa has transcended its original role as a folktale warning. It has become a versatile symbol, a vessel for our collective fears, our respect for heritage, and our fascination with the line between myth and reality. The creature continues to devour not men, but the imaginations of all who encounter its enduring, haunting image. The Piasa bird's survival across centuries rests upon two very different kinds of memory. Long before Marquette's quill scratched across parchment, the story lived in the spoken word, passed from elder to child around campfires for generations. This was a living history breathed into existence with each retelling. The rhythm of the language, the dramatic pauses, the intensity in the storyteller's eyes, these were all part of the message. Oral tradition is not a fragile chain but a resilient river, its course adapting to the landscape of time while carrying its essential truth forward. The details might shift slightly with each generation, the emphasis changing to reflect the current fears or values of the community, but the core of the story, the monster, the chief, and the sacred victory remained intact. This was how the Illiniwek preserved their identity and their understanding of the world. Their history was not stored in libraries but woven into the very fabric of their culture, a continuous performance that kept their past vividly alive. Then came the written record. When Father Marquette described the painting in his journal, he froze a single moment in time. He captured details that might otherwise have been lost, giving the Piasa a specific form for the European world to see. His account is invaluable, a fixed point in history, but writing is not a neutral act. Marquette was an outsider, a man viewing a foreign culture through the lens of his own deeply held beliefs. He saw a demon where the Illiniwek may have seen a complex spiritual symbol. He translated the name as the bird that devours men, a terrifyingly literal interpretation that may have missed deeper, more nuanced meanings reserved for the initiated. His writing carries the undeniable bias of his perspective, framing the Piasa as a pagan monster in a way that aligned with his own worldview. The legend we know today is a tapestry woven from these two threads. The oral tradition provided the soul of the story, its emotional core and cultural significance. The written record provided the specific, tangible description that allowed it to be catalogued and spread beyond its place of origin. Yet the written word, with its illusion of permanence and authority, often overshadowed the fluid, living voice of the oral tradition. Marquette's account became the primary source, the definitive version for historians, while the Illiniwek's own evolving relationship with the story was often relegated to the background. This interplay raises a profound question. Are we hearing the true, multifaceted legend of the Piasa, or are we hearing the version that was first and most forcefully written down? The written word gave the Piasa immortality, but it may have also locked it into a single, terrifying shape, forever obscuring the richer, more complex creature that once soared in the stories of its people. Monster stories are not just fireside entertainment, they are fundamental tools for human survival. Across every culture and every era, we have crafted tales of terrifying beasts to make sense of a world filled with dangers we could not otherwise explain. Before the science of weather was understood, a sudden, devastating tornado needed a cause. It was easier to blame the wrath of a sky demon or the wing beats of a thunderbird than to accept the chaos of random atmospheric pressure. The Piasa bird served this exact purpose for the Illiniwek. The inexplicable disappearance of a hunter, a child wandering off, or a canoe lost to the river's current, these tragedies were given a face and a form. The monster became a tangible explanation for the intangible and random cruelties of life. By personifying the unknown, these stories make it manageable. You cannot fight a vague, abstract fear, but you can devise a plan to outsmart a creature, no matter how powerful it might be. This narrative framework transforms helplessness into agency, giving a community a sense of control over the terrifying uncertainties of their world. Beyond explaining nature's mysteries, these tales are powerful instruments for social cohesion. The story of the Piasa bird is not about a lone hero. It is a lesson in communal action. Chief Ouatoga's courage would have been meaningless without the disciplined unity of his warriors hiding in the mud. The myth reinforces that the individual's survival is intrinsically linked to the group's cooperation. It teaches the values essential for a community to thrive: courage, yes, but also trust, obedience, and sacrifice. The shared fear of the monster forges a stronger bond among those who face it together. The collective relief and triumph after its defeat solidify that bond, creating a unified identity. We Faced the Destroyer and We Won becomes a foundational part of their cultural story, a narrative that strengthens social fabric for generations. These stories also function as cautionary tales, enforcing boundaries and norms without the need for constant policing. The Piasa's hunting ground was the river bluffs, a specific, dangerous place. The legend implicitly warns, stay away from the cliffs, do not travel alone. For a child hearing the story, the message is seared into memory by fear. The monster becomes the reason for the rule, a far more effective deterrent than a simple command. In this way, folklore externalizes our own inner demons and social anxieties. The greed and gluttony that can tear a community apart are projected onto the Piasa, a creature whose endless consumption literally devours the people. By defeating the monster, the story symbolically condemns those destructive behaviors and celebrates their opposites: generosity, selflessness, and communal responsibility. These narratives are a safe space to explore our deepest fears. Around a fire, in the safety of the circle, we can confront the idea of being hunted, of loss, and of death, all through the metaphor of the monster. We experience the catharsis of fear and the joy of survival without ever leaving the safety of the group. The monster story is a rehearsal for real-world crises, a psychological training ground that prepares us to face the true terrors of life with the same unity and resolve as Chief Ouatoga and his people. The Piasa Bird, in all its terrifying glory, was never just a monster. It was a teacher, a psychologist, and a social architect. Its legend carved not just into stone, but into the very heart of the community it both threatened and paradoxically helped to unite. Where exactly did this terrifying creature fit within the spiritual world of the Illiniwek? The line between a literal monster and a sacred spirit is often blurred in mythology. It is entirely possible the Piasa was both feared and revered, a dangerous but necessary power that demanded respect. Rather than a simple beast to be slain, it may have been viewed as a powerful, albeit malevolent, spirit of the bluffs. In many indigenous worldviews, powerful forces are not inherently good or evil. They simply are, and they must be acknowledged. The Piasa could have been the spiritual embodiment of the river cliffs themselves, a genius loci or spirit of the place. Those towering limestone walls were a dominant feature of the landscape, a source of shelter, a vantage point, and a place of undeniable power. Attributing a powerful, demanding spirit to that location would make perfect sense. Its hunger was a metaphor for the respect the land required. You do not take from this sacred place without giving something in return. You do not trespass without consequence. The creature's story, then, becomes a sacred narrative explaining why certain places are off-limits, why certain taboos must be observed. Perhaps young men were warned not to climb those particular bluffs for their vision quests, or certain caves were forbidden because they were the dwelling of this spirit. The legend enforced a spiritual geography, mapping out the boundaries between the safe, human world and the potent, untamed realms of the divine. This transforms the Piasa from a random predator into a guardian of the threshold, a spiritual warden whose terrifying presence taught the people how to live in correct relationship with a powerful and dangerous landscape. This powerful story, however, arrives in our modern world wrapped in a complex and essential conversation. The legend of the Piasa Bird is not a public domain fairy tale. It is a sacred narrative belonging to the Illiniwek people, and its retelling by outsiders demands respect and sensitivity. When we share these stories, we must ask ourselves a difficult question: are we honoring the culture or simply taking from it? Cultural appropriation occurs when elements of a minority culture are adopted by a dominant culture without permission, often stripped of their original meaning and context. Imagine a powerful family heirloom, a locket containing the picture of a beloved ancestor. If a stranger were to take that locket, replace the picture with their own, and wear it as a simple piece of jewelry, the original, sacred meaning would be utterly lost. This is the risk with indigenous stories. For generations, Native American traditions have been mined for entertainment. their spiritual symbols used as mascots or fashion trends, while the living, breathing people who created them were marginalized and silenced. The Piasa bird is more than a cool monster, it is a piece of a living spiritual heritage. To tell its story responsibly, we must first acknowledge its source. This means explicitly naming the Illiniwek people as the originators of the legend, not just as a footnote but as a central part of the narrative. It means recognizing that our understanding is limited, filtered through the lens of European explorers and romantic revivalists, and that the deepest layers of meaning belong solely to the descendants of those who first painted it on the cliff. Honoring the culture also means supporting it. If we are fascinated by the story, we can seek out and amplify the voices of contemporary Illiniwek artists, storytellers, and historians. We can support indigenous-led cultural initiatives and educate ourselves about the ongoing history and present-day realities of these communities. The goal is not to stop telling these incredible stories, but to tell them better, to move from exploitation to appreciation, ensuring the Piasa bird is not just a relic of the past, but a living testament to a culture that continues to endure and thrive. The Piasa bird endures because it is a perfect story engine. Its narrative is built on a foundation we instinctively recognize: the classic monster-hunter structure. A terrifying threat emerges, a wise leader receives a divine plan, a team unites, and through courage and sacrifice, the beast is vanquished. This is the essential blueprint of stories from Beowulf to Jaws, a timeless arc that resonates deep within our collective psyche. We are wired to root for the underdog, to cheer for the community that bands together against an overwhelming evil. The Piasa is not just a monster, it is the ultimate antagonist in a primal drama of survival. Its defeat is a cathartic release, a promise that no matter how dark the threat, unity and courage can prevail. This powerful framework gives the legend a universal appeal, making it feel both ancient and instantly familiar. Beyond its satisfying structure, the legend taps into the most fundamental of all conflicts, the battle between good and evil. The Piasa is not a complex, morally gray creature. It is a force of pure consumption, an unambiguous evil that exists only to devour. Chief Ouatoga and his warriors represent the light of community, faith, and self-sacrifice. This clear dichotomy makes the story incredibly easy to grasp and emotionally powerful. There is no moral ambiguity, only a clear threat that must be faced. This stark contrast allows the legend to function as a powerful moral fable, teaching that some challenges require the best of humanity to overcome the worst of the world. It simplifies the complexities of life into a story where right and wrong are clearly defined and good ultimately wins. Yet this story could not have been born just anywhere. Its power is inextricably linked to the dramatic landscape of the Mississippi River bluffs. The legend is rooted in the soil and stone of a specific place, giving it an authenticity that a generic fairy tale lacks. Those towering limestone cliffs are not a vague, fictional setting. They are a real, tangible location you can visit today. The wind still howls through their fissures, and the caves still darken their faces. This geographical anchor transforms the Piasa from an abstract idea into a potential reality. The story feels true because the place feels ancient and powerful, a character in its own right that breathes life into the myth. The monster and the landscape are one, and that connection to a real, awe-inspiring location grounds the fantasy in a way that fires the imagination. Finally, the Piasa bird holds a unique position in the tapestry of American mythology. It is a rare and powerful fusion of two distinct historical streams. Its heart and soul are purely Native American, a story born from the spiritual worldview of the Illiniwek people. Yet its introduction to the wider world came through the written record of European explorers, and its modern visual identity was shaped by a 19th-century American professor. This creature stands at a crossroads, embodying the complex, often tragic, interweaving of indigenous and settler histories on this continent. It is not solely an old-world import like a vampire or werewolf, nor is it a modern urban legend. The Piasa is a truly American chimera in every sense, a myth forged in the collision and blending of cultures that defines the nation's history. This unique heritage makes it a story that belongs uniquely to this land, a haunting voice from the bluffs that continues to speak of ancient fears, hard-won triumphs, and the enduring power of a well-told tale. From a single journal entry in 1673, the Piasa bird has soared across centuries to become a modern landmark. Its journey is a testament to the unbreakable chain of storytelling, a legend that refused to be erased by time, weather, or misunderstanding. This creature is far more than a monster. It is a powerful symbol of mystery, a guardian of cultural heritage, and a living reminder that our oldest stories still have the power to captivate and teach us. The painted image on the cliff may be a modern recreation, but the story it tells is ancient, echoing the timeless human struggle against the unknown and the profound strength we find in community. The next chapter of this story is yours to write. If you ever find yourself traveling along the Great River Road, make the journey to Alton, Illinois. Look up at those colossal wings painted on the bluff, and for a moment, listen for the echo of a story that once terrified and united a people. Let it inspire you to learn more about the rich tapestry of Native American folklore, where every myth holds a deeper truth about the land and its original inhabitants. And after you have looked into the eyes of the Piasa, tell us what mythical creature from your own culture or travels has captured your imagination. Share your own favorite legends in the comments below and keep the ancient art of storytelling alive.